chapter 6 and verse 9.
Mm-hmm.
Then there arose certain of the synagogue,
Read.
which is called the synagogue.
Oh, my bad. Start at verse 8.
In verse 8.
Yeah.
And Stephen, full of faith.
Full of what?
Full of faith.
Full of what?
Full of faith.
To endure these things, we have to be full of faith. Stephen was full of faith. When you go into Acts 7, he started blasting them, giving them the entire rundown of the history. And then he was killed, stoned to death. But what did it say he had? Read it again.
And Stephen, full of faith.
He had full of faith. He knew where he was going. He understood what was to happen to him. And he was okay with him. Read.
And Stephen,
Uh-huh.
full of faith.
Read.
And power,
Uh-huh.
did great wonders
Uh-huh.
and miracles among the people.
Read.
Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and Cyrenians, and Alexandrians, and of them of Sicilia, and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. Disputing, with Stephen.
Uh-huh.
And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake.
They weren't able to resist the wisdom and the spirit in which he spake. They couldn't confound him. They couldn't confound him. He was speaking the scriptures, and they was like, man, what the hell? We can't deal with this dude. We cannot deal with this dude, man. So what did they have to do? Read. They can't, just like they can't deal with us now. They can't stop the prophecy that's coming out. They can't deal with us on the street corners. They can't deal with us on any platform, anywhere we go, in any state or any country in the world. Read.
Then they suborned men, which said,
Which means suborn means to bribe. What they did was they went to go bribe men. Read.
which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words.
Now they're doing what? Lying. Read.
Against Moses
Uh-huh.
and against God.
Uh-huh.
And they stirred up the people.
They did what?
And they stirred up the people.
What do you think happens when these apologetics hop on our videos and take a snippet and take a snippet of what we teach, right? Don't get the full context of what was being talked about, but then say we're not teaching the Bible and what we're doing is against God. And who do they show it to? There's 60,000 followers, there's 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers. To do what? To read it again.
And they suborned men,
Uh-huh.
which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses
Uh-huh.
and against
That's what
God.
they do. They're speaking against Christ. They're not Christ. They're not filled with the love of Christ. They're saying we're being blasphemous when they say that. Read.
And against God.
Uh-huh.
And they stirred up the people.
When they post those snippets, trying to dispute or correct what we say, what are they doing? Read.
And they stirred up the people.
They're trying to stir up the people against us. That's what they're doing. Read.
And the elders
Uh-huh.
and the scribes
Uh-huh.
and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council and set up false witnesses.
They did what?
And set up false witnesses.
And they set up false witnesses. They set up people to lie to say that what we was doing was wrong, was going against God, was going against Moses. But what? They had no understanding. Read.
Which said,
Uh-huh.
this man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law.
Okay. From there, let's jump over to 2 Maccabees 6. 2 Maccabees 6. Let's get some examples of this. We already knew, I mentioned briefly the example of Stephen and him being stoned because he was blasting them with the history, telling them about themselves. Right? Go to 2 Maccabees 6, start at verse 18.
The book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 6 and verse 18.
Uh-huh.
Eleazar.
Who?
Eleazar.
So Eleazar was who? Read.
One of the principal scribes.
So he was a principal scribe. Uh-huh.
An aged man.
He was an aged man. He was an older man.
And of well-favored countenance.
Uh-huh.
Was constrained
He
to
was
open
what?
his mouth.
So he was constrained. He was pinned down, right? To do what?
And to eat swine's flesh.
To eat swine's flesh. Go ahead.
But he, choosing rather to die gloriously.
Then to do what?
But he, choosing rather to die gloriously.
He rather choose to die gloriously than to what?
Than to live stained with such an abomination, spit it forth, and came of his own accord to the torment.
So he spit it out of his mouth. I'm not doing this. I'm not going against God. Why? Because he was full of faith, just like Stephen was. Read.
As it
Jump down to
behooved,
verse 21.
in verse 21, but they that had the charge of the wicked feast, for the old acquaintance they had with the man, taking him aside, but sought him to bring flesh
Because they were cool, right? He brought him to the side. Go ahead.
of his own provision,
So he brought him something that was what? Lawful. Go ahead.
such as was lawful for him to use,
Uh-huh.
and to make as if he did eat of the flesh taken from the sacrifice commanded by the
So
king.
he tried to bring him something lawful that he could eat to make it look like as if he was eating of the sacrifice that was made for the king. Right? Go ahead.
that in so doing,
But what kind of spirit did Eleazar have on him? Read. Did he care more about himself and his life, or did he care about the lives of the people that he was guiding? Read.
that in so doing he might be delivered from death, and for the old friendship which them find favor.
So they wanted him to be delivered from death, right? And to kind of exact or continue the friendship that they had, right? Or do this as a favor to me because we've been cool. Just act like you're gonna eat it, bro. It's your food. Just act like it's from, the king's sacrifice, bro. So nothing bad to happen to you.
Hell no.
Hell nah.
That's right. And that's like what what's his name? Meek Mill said.
What do you say? I missed it.
In his music, he said that they pay them to destroy the minds of the people. So on the other side of things, he tries to make up for it by doing all these little sit-down events and
So
stuff.
wait, hold on. Time out. So what you're telling me is he still raps. He's still speaking destructive music to our people.
Yep,
Still gets paid for his destructive music that he's teaching to our people.
yep.
And then on the side, because he knows why he's getting paid for it, he has these little community events and he gives back.
You don't find that suspicious?
Yep.
You don't find that suspicious?
It's out there. He brought it up and said it like just straight out clear, yeah, I know I'm doing bad, but this is what I'm gonna do in order to make up for these things.
Dumb as hell, man.
Come on.
They telling us right to our face and we still want to follow it. All right. Where was we at? Verse 23.
In verse 23,
Uh-huh.
but he began to consider discreetly, and as became his age,
So he began to consider this thing. He's like, okay, well, I'm eating lawfully. I'm not really taking of the sacrifice of the king, so it might not be that bad. And I could continue my friendship. Okay. But what happened?
and as became his age, and the excellency of his ancient years,
Mm-hmm.
and the honor of his gray head.
So he began to think, right? That wisdom that he has that I talked about in the beginning started to kick in, right? Like he had to think about who he was to the people. Watch, read. Right, his legacy.
Whereunto he was come, and his most honest education from a child,
So everything that he had learned from his child up until now, read.
and his most,
Or rather.
or rather the holy law made and given by God.
So he starts thinking about the laws, read.
Therefore he answered accordingly,
So now listen to the answer, read.
and willed them straight ways to send him to the grave.
He said, man, kill me. After he thought about it, like, nah, you know what? I've been keeping and knowing this law since I was a child. I have a great name. I'm not willing to risk that to look like I did something. No, to hell with that. You know what? Just go ahead and kill me. I'll take death. Go ahead.
For it becometh not our age, said he, in any wise to disassemble, whereby many young persons might think that Eleazar, being 80 years old and 10,
10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 that what he was doing to stain his name and teach the kids, the people that are under him, the wrong thing. Because now what? They're going to be thinking, well, if Eleazar did it, maybe we should do it too.
Boy, ain't no way, boy.
That's what he had to think about. That's why he had to tap into that age, into that wisdom, into his youth, what he learned from when he was a child. Read.
And so they through mind hypocrisy and desire to live a little time and a moment longer should be deceived by me.
He said, so should me be living a little bit longer? Because I'm already getting old in age. Me living another 5 or 10 years, is it worth deceiving my own people? Or standing my name and making my people start doing wrong because I've done it? Read.
I get a stain to mine old age. And make it abominable.
And make his name a shame. Read.
For the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men.
Why? Because if I read it again.
For the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men.
Okay. For this time right now, if I do this, I'm going to be delivered from the punishment of men.
Yet should I not escape the hand of the Almighty.
But I'm not going to escape that eternal judgment.
Neither alive nor dead.
Neither alive nor dead.
Wherefore now, manfully changing this life, I will show myself such as one as mine age requireth.
So I'm going to show what I'm supposed to do. Go ahead.
And leave a notable example.
And leave what?
And leave a notable example.
So we are to leave an example for who? The young men that are under us, the men that are coming into this truth behind us, the kids that we teach in the congregation, the young MOV, the young daughters of Sarah. We are to leave them an example.
That's right.
Read.
To such as be young to die willingly and courageously.
To die what?
To die willingly.
To die willingly. Read.
And courageously.
And courageously.
For the honorable and holy laws.
For the honorable what?
And holy laws.
For the honorable and holy laws. That's the example we are to leave. But we can't do that if we don't have that mindset. We can't do that if we're not full of faith. What verse did we leave off on?
That was verse 28.
28?
We didn't finish 28.
We didn't finish 28? All right, finish 28.
And when he had said these words, immediately he went to the torment.
Read.
That they that led him changing the good, will they bear him a little before into hatred, because the foresaid speeches proceeded, as they thought from a desperate mind.
Read.
But when he was ready to die with stripes.
He don't really mean that. He's desperate right now, but read.
But when he was ready to die with stripes, he groaned and said, it is manifest unto the Lord.
Read.
That hath the holy knowledge, that whereas I might have been delivered from death, I now endure sore pains in body.
I'm enduring sore pains in body. Read.
By being beaten.
By being what?
By being beaten.
By being beaten because he was doing what? Keeping God's laws. Because he was being an example to the people. Read.
But in soul am well content to suffer these things.
He was what?
But in soul.
But in my soul, in my spirit, in my flesh, I don't care. But in my spirit, I'm content to do what?
Am well content to suffer these things.
He's content to suffer these things. Read.
Because I fear him.
Because he fears who?
Because I fear him.
He fears God. The fear of God, knowing that you'll have eternal death if you don't keep the laws, is the only fear you should have, not of man. That's why Peter had to say, we shall obey God rather than man. That's why they rejoiced after getting beaten and put in prison and then went and taught again, because we're going to obey God rather than fearing man. Read.
And thus this man died.
Read.
Leaving his death for an example.
Leaving his death for a what?
An example.
For an example unto us. For an example on how we ought to be. This is our forefather Eleazar. A man that was 90 years old going through this. Read.
Of noble courage.
Of noble courage,
And a memorial of virtue.
And a memorial of virtue. Read.
Not only unto young men.
Not only unto the young men and how they should be. Not only an example unto them, but unto who?
But unto all his nation.
Unto everybody. What we're doing right now, men, sisters, what we're doing right now is to leave an example unto the entire nation.
Message.
That's why we have to get our minds right. That's why we have to prepare for the things that are finna start happening to us. We have to leave an example for those that are going to be behind us. So what? So when they see it happen, it grows their faith. Their faith gets boosted up. They know how we went out was all for the love of God and his laws.